Napoleon Bonaparte did not conquer Europe solely through the power of steel. He did it through signatures, wax seals, and balance sheets. Behind the thunderous sound of artillery, there was a quieter, more meticulous machinery at work. Treasury officials, notaries, bankers, and clerks managing numbers in the same way that generals manage regiments. The image of Napoleon that we often see is that of a battlefield genius, the improbable victories, the daring marches. But this is not the full picture. The empire did not rise merely because of Napoleon's military prowess. It rose because he rewired France's financial system. He understood what most rulers before him did not. A state can outfight its enemies for a season, but it can only outlast them if it outfinances them. And this, my friends, is a story you were never taught. How a young Corsican, inheriting a bankrupt treasury after a revolution, rebuilt a financial system that was strong enough to fuel 15 years of war, law, and modernization. At the end of the 18th century, France was a wreck in elegant clothing. The monarchy had fallen due to its own massive debts. For decades, French kings had borrowed to fund wars and to indulge in lavish court luxuries. They leaned on a tax system that exempted the wealthiest from contributing, while squeezing the poor to fund their excesses. When the revolution detonated in 1789, it toppled the political structure, but left the arithmetic largely unchanged. The new revolutionary regime attempted an emergency fix. Paper money, called assignats, supposedly backed by confiscated church lands. At first, it seemed like magic, liquidity without pain, until it morphed into inflation without breaks. By the mid-1790s, prices were exploding, public confidence was evaporating, and everyday trade was choking on distrust. The army marched in wooden shoes, and creditors demanded hard metal, not empty promises. France had political vision, but it lacked a monetary spine. Enter Napoleon in 1799, at the age of 29, as first consul. He was a soldier by training, but a systems thinker by instinct. He saw what needed to be fixed first: credibility. Before you can command an army, you must first command a currency. So, Napoleon did something radical for a nation still raw from revolution. He created a bank, not the old courtiers found in privilege, but a hybrid institution designed to serve the stability of the state and the economy's oxygen. In 1800, he chartered the Banque de France. Private investors put up capital. The state granted privileges and direction. That blend was intentional. Purely public money risked returning to politically motivated printing. Purely private finance risked a new oligarchy. The new bank would discount commercial bills, stabilize payments, and, most crucially, begin issuing banknotes under strict limits. Napoleon understood that confidence needs anchors, not speeches. He gave France two. First, he rebuilt the treasury into a professional institution. He promoted a quiet genius, Nicolas Francois Maillon, to manage the public purse with a discipline France had not seen in generations. Cash flows were centralized, arrears were cataloged and reduced, and the state stopped improvising and began accounting. Second, he gave France a new money with a measurable soul. In 1803, the franc germinal was defined against fixed weights of silver and gold. After years of paper mirages, the unit of account was again anchored in reality. This was not financial fashion. It was a social contract. The baker, the soldier, the supplier, everyone needed to believe that tomorrow's coin would mean the same thing it meant today. The franc germinal did that. But money is only as strong as the taxes behind it. Napoleon knew that the Bourbon system of farming taxes to private collectors bred corruption and resentment. So he killed it. The state would collect its own revenues. He tightened and enforced four key pillars: the land contribution, the personal and movable levy, the patent on professions, and a set of excises later grouped as the reunited duties. Inspectors carried notebooks, not bribe bags. Cadasters, detailed land registers, were expanded so assessments were based on measured acres, not negotiated influence. In 1807, Napoleon created a Supreme Audit Court to track the flow of public money with the same rigor he demanded on the battlefield. In his model, audit was not an afterthought. It was the nervous system of trust. With the fiscal floor rebuilt, Napoleon turned to the thing that would define his age: financing continuous war, without recreating the monarchy's ruin. This is where he was most modern. Napoleon treated war like a cash-flowing enterprise. Victorious campaigns were not just strategic wins. They were revenue events. Indemnities were levied on defeated states. Requisitions of grain, horses, uniforms, and metals were priced and booked. Occupied territories were told to provision the very troops who occupied them. The home treasury was spared the worst spikes because the front paid the front. When Prussia was broken after the Battle of Jena in 1806, contributions poured in. After the treaties of Tilsit in 1807, more money flowed from the vanquished. The empire became a self-funding machine as long as it kept winning. Napoleon multiplied his financial channels. In 1803, he sold Louisiana to the United States for $15 million, cash and bonds, preferring money in hand and British denial to dreams of a Western colony he could not defend. He turned conquered administrative chaos into taxable order. The Napoleonic Code was imposed, customs were restored, and local treasuries were put on schedules. He even imagined credit for enterprise, coaxing municipal savings banks and departmental discount houses into existence, so commerce could breathe while armies marched. Napoleon's empire was not an afterthought. It was a second front, but every system has a stress test. For Napoleon, it was the water, the one thing he could not command. He tried to strangle Britain with the Continental System, a vast economic blockade designed in 1806 to close European ports to British goods. On paper, it was strategic finance. Deny the enemy trade revenues, starve his credit, break his will without a shot. In practice, it was a place where policy met human incentive and lost. Smuggling became an industry. Neutral flags became masks. Coastal towns colluded to survive. The blockade bled his allies and fueled resentment while Britain adapted, rerouting commerce and innovating finance to ride out the storm. Harbors that once fell silent. Prices bent in the wrong places. A weapon meant to suffocate the enemy began to bruise the friends. Napoleon adjusted by tightening internal control. More customs men, more seizures, more fines. This is the first lesson for every modern leader who admires Napoleon's administrative brilliance. Coercion can extend policy. It cannot replace economics. A continent will not remain poorer on purpose indefinitely. Markets find cracks, and the state spends treasure plugging them. The more energy you pour into prevention, the more brittle the system becomes. Napoleon learned this in invoices long before he admitted it in proclamations. For a time, victories papered over the strain. Austerlitz paid for a year. Wagram bought another. But the arithmetic was turning. The moment of truth came with the snow. The Russian campaign in 1812 was not just a military catastrophe. It was a balance sheet killer. The lost men were not just uniforms and muskets. They were the Republic's most expensive line item. Trained human capital. The carcasses of horses in the drifts were not just tragedy. They were the collapse of mobility that the Treasury had been feeding for a decade. Supplies prepositioned at cost were torched on retreat. The contribution model flipped overnight. Instead of the front paying the front, the center had to drain itself to rebuild what the ice destroyed. Creditors who once raced to roll notes now hesitated. Even the best administered treasury could not fund a war that consumed faster than any tax code could feed. And yet, and this is essential, the edifice Napoleon built did not vanish with him. When Paris fell in 1814 and the emperor was sent away, the bank remained. The franc germinal stood. The audit court kept counting. The tax collectors kept walking their routes. France had been given a financial spine. That is Napoleon's deeper legacy, and the reason we still live with a shadow. He did not merely seize Europe. He standardized a nation. He proved that law, money, and administration could be fused into a durable engine of state that outlasted the man who assembled it. The deeper you look, the more his era reads like a manual for the modern age. A central bank with private shareholders and public aims, a stable currency tied, in its founding, to metal weights that people could trust. A tax system designed to be broad, knowable, and internally collected. A treasury run by professionals, not patrons. And a sober recognition that war, no matter how brilliantly executed, is a financial business that can bankrupt even the strong if it is not matched by peace that pays. The empire is extraordinary precisely because it is ordinary in its components. There is no magic instability, only structure, enforcement, and incentives align with reality. But if you stop the story here, you miss the warning baked into the triumph. Systems built on constant external revenue, indemnities, requisitions, plunder, or today's easier cousin, rolling deficits justified.